Hey everybody, Ryan's here. Um, Ryan, if you can hear me, I can see you in the waiting back there. I'm gonna wait to see if Henna comes on, then I'll put you both back in the stream. Just see, got a few people already on here. So a little while back, I was thinking about doing a video about summer perfumes. Most of my audience, incidentally, even though it is winter here in the southern hemisphere, most of my audience on YouTube are in the northern hemisphere, and it's obviously summer there now. And I figured I wanted to do a video about perfumes to wear in summer, but things that aren't traditionally associated as summer perfumes. And I asked Ryan and Henna to think of a few perfumes that maybe are more associated with colder seasons that they also like wearing in summer. So they're both here now, so I'm going to join them to the stream if they're ready. Um, and everyone say hi to Ryan and Henna. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hello.
And
How's
I
it
can hear
going?
you. Good, great. I can hear you both pretty well, and hopefully you guys can hear me too.
Yeah.
All right, sweet. So I was just explaining what the topic of the video or the live stream was going to be. So what I'm going to do is actually, as we mention each of our perfumes, I'll put them on the scrolling banner at the bottom of the screen so people can see what we've talked about, what we've mentioned. Hi to everyone in the chat. Hi, Lindsay. Hi, Tripfi. Hi, Paroli. Hi, Antonio. So I think each of us have picked about five perfumes that we're going to mention in the stream, and I've neglected to see if any one of us have doubled up on a perfume. So hopefully that hasn't happened. But if it did, then that just means we have the same opinion about it. All right. So first of all, I hope you're both well. Thank you for doing the stream today. And for I know a lot of my European subscribers, like are missing out on this because it's the middle of the night for them, but it'll be up on YouTube so you can rewatch. The only thing you can't do is take part in the chat. So, guys, I don't have any preference about which order we do this in. Maybe we do one each and take turns. So the topic is perfumes we like wearing in summer or in the heat that aren't necessarily classified as a warm weather perfume, but they just work for whatever reason. Maybe it's individual skin or whatever. Who wants to go first?
I think Ryan should go first.
I should go first? Okay.
Yeah, you go first.
I don't know
Ryan.
why. I have no reason for picking you, but I think you should go first.
That's fine. I was going to put you on the spot, Henna, but okay. Sure. So I'm gonna pick one that I think is interesting because I think this is a fragrance that is typically associated with kind of autumn, fall, winter, but actually doesn't perform very well in fall, winter, and is actually a fragrance that works much better in warmer weather.
Okay.
And that is discontinued fragrance. So sorry, folks. But there's still plenty of it floating around out there and not terribly expensive, despite what you might think, which is Tom Ford for Men Extreme. This got discontinued a little bit ago. There was kind of a hype thing about it, but it's an interesting fragrance because it's sometimes compared to what is it? Not Plum Japonais, the Japon Noir, which was discontinued very early on as far as private blend fragrances go. But it's mostly ambery fragrance with a bit of the DNA carried over from Black Orchid. So it was kind of the attempt to take that truffle accord and mix it with what was the original Tom Ford for Men, which was a more kind of generic designer masculine amber profile. And then it adds like a bunch of leather and patchouli, and it's very green and dark. And with a wonderful dark purple juicy fig that's very different from like a green fig note, and that's kind of why I like it. It almost goes like in a plummy fig direction. It's kind of like that really overripe fig, and I don't encounter that a lot, so that's one reason I like this fragrance a lot. But for such a dark fragrance, it kind of in cold weather it just disappears. Like you put it on skin and it goes nowhere. It just evaporates into thin air. You can't detect it. I've worn it in winter many times, and I've thought, like this is going to be nice. It just goes nowhere. But you apply this thing in heat, and it screams off the skin a little bit, but like in a good way, because like all the earthy qualities in it really come out in a way that could be challenging, but I find really exciting, because like you really get the earthiness of this kind of truffle accord mixed in there with like the earthy patchouli and herbal notes that are in there in a way that I find really satisfying. So it's kind of like this earthy fig truffle thing that feels very unique, even though it's built on like a fairly standard designer ambery masculine base. So that is one I wear a lot in summer, because it doesn't really work in any other season as far as I'm concerned.
I think I remember smelling that one a few years ago when it was still available, and I do remember that there was something of Black Orchid in it. Does it like share any similar notes? Is there like a truffle note there or anything like that?
Yeah, the truffle note is pulled right from Black Orchid, but it's like the rest of the Black Orchid structure isn't there. So all the kind of aggressive, sweet elements of Black Orchid and things like that aren't there. The truffle accord is pulled from it. So it's it feels like they released Black Orchid, and then Tom Ford wanted to put that note into a masculine release, and they kind of released this flanker, which I think was originally limited edition, but it kind of kept hanging around until it was discontinued in 2017. I think that's the cutoff for when batches just kind of dropped off the face of the earth. So it's interesting stuff. By the way, did nobody pay unicorn prices for it, because it's not worth it. But if you find a good deal for it, it's worth a look. I enjoy it a lot, just because more so than anything, because I like the fig. I really love fig as a note, and it's easy to get green fig. It's very hard to get the like juicy purple, dark fig notes.
That's a good point. Do you still see it on eBay, or is it at discounters still?
No, it's gone from discounters. I do still see it on eBay, and a lot of times people are like pricing it at like post Tom Ford discontinuation prices. But if you're kind of like savvy about it, you can find people who are just trying to kind of like get rid of it, because I think even in discontinuation, it's not that popular. Like there was a moment where it was discontinued and everybody was kind of jumping on the bandwagon of picking it up, but I don't think it's ever been that popular a fragrance, and even now it's not really all that beloved.
Excellent.
But it's hyped up now.
Yeah, but have you smelled that one, Henna?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
I don't think I even came across it. I kind of like avoided Tom Ford for a little bit there. I think like that one falls into the time when I wasn't really looking at every new Tom Ford release. So, I mean, there's still some good ones. So, good that you found.
All right. Well, I'm. Are you sure you want me to go next, or you want to go next?
You can go.
Okay. I took an approach in picking my 5 perfumes where I would focus on a particular note or accord that's not normally associated with summer perfumes. So I'll introduce what I'm going to talk about. So I was trying to think of incense perfumes that work in the heat in summer, and the obvious one that first came to my mind was actually Timbuktu, which I still have my empty bottle of here. But I kind of think that people sort of already kind of wear that in the summer. So the other one that I really like wearing, and it's got a different kind of incense note to a lot of other perfumes, is actually Comme des Garçons Two Man. So there is like a very bright fruity note, which I believe that it's listed as kumquat. And there's also vetiver in here, but it's got like all this waxy aldehydic. I mean, the incense always gets compared to the smell of a snuffed candle, that kind of thing. And you look at things like Fragrantica and Parfumo, and everyone classifies this as a cooler weather scent, probably more for the autumn, fall. But I think this really blooms when there's a little bit of heat on your skin as well. I have no trouble wearing it on warmer days. Probably not really hot days that we get here in Melbourne, because almost any perfume is too stifling on days like that. But I think I mean, this is still readily available. I think it's still one of Comme des Garçons' more popular perfumes. I've had this in my collection probably going 6-7 years now, and you don't need many sprays. It lasts a long time. Oh, well, it does on me. It lasts like a good 6 to 7 hours on my skin easily. So I think that's my incense recommendation. If anyone's wondering that whether you can wear incense in the summer, you can. You just got to find the right one, and one that's combined with the right notes as well. I think vetiver and incense is a good combination, generally speaking. And if you get some things that are brightening it up or giving it a bit of sparkle, like the kumquat and the aldehydes do in this, I think it definitely works in warmer weather for sure. So that's Two Man.
I think that's a good pick. I mean, I would think a lot of the Comme des Garçons line might actually work well in heat, because it's kind of dry and like like very strong emphasis on like mineral notes. So as long as that stuff, it can be dark, but as long as it's not like paired with really gloopy, heavy stuff, like sometimes it is, like I could see that really blooming well in hot weather with that sun kind of beating down in your skin.
Yeah, it's weird because when you think about perfumes, I don't know if you guys do this too, but I often, apart from obviously smelling it, but the smell sometimes evokes a particular in like sort of environment or climate, and I never think about wearing Two Man and being indoors in a dark, cool environment. I always think about being outdoors when I'm wearing Two Man, and that kind of sort of lends itself to having warmer weather and more pleasant sort of sunny days and that kind of thing. Yeah, so that's my pick. My first
Even
pick.
Avignon is like an outdoorsy kind of incense, right? And like even like the Petit Clochois, like that's very outdoorsy and piney and fresh, really, and you could wear it all kinds of weather.
I mean, yeah, definitely. When I used to wear Avignon, on me, I just found that I probably oversprayed, to be honest. Like I don't know how many sprays of Avignon you use, but like
I just had a sample, so
yeah. So I probably oversprayed it, but Avignon on me had a tendency to sort of kind of be a little bit too claustrophobic to wear in really warm weather. But I get it because it's got that airiness about
yeah.
it. Okay, I think it's your turn, Henna.
Go for it, Henna.
So jumping off your incense and vetiver combo, I picked Chantecaille vetiver, And I
Ah,
feel like vetiver is like the most overlooked summer ingredient, which is kind of ironic because it's from a hot place and they literally make root or make mats out of the vetiver grass and then soak it in water and then hang those mats up or have them around and then blow the fan through the mat so that you kind of get the water in the air and it's cooling and you get the scent as well. And so any perfume that has vetiver as a main note, I think would work in the summertime. Like I just happen to have vetiver, but this is really close to Chanel's Sycomore too. I think Sycomore is like a little bit more smoky, but this is also, it's got grapefruit as a top note, so that's like very cooling. Yes, citrus, but mostly you get vetiver. And I think, you know, if you're looking for an alternative to a citrus for a warm weather scent, then vetiver is really something to keep in mind. Like any kind of vetiver, try them all, I think.
is that the same one that you had in your top 10 video that you
Yeah.
uploaded recently? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so I've had this bottle, so like the lid is getting kind of wonky. I've had this bottle since I think 2008 or 2009. I've had it for a
Wow.
really long. It's just so me. Like I just love it so much. When I smelled this for the first time, it instantly took me like to summer vacations in India with my family. And like if you ever stepped into like we'd always go in the summer because we'd go in our summer vacation. So it was like so hot there, like boiling hot. And then anytime you stepped into like a cold air conditioned lobby, it would smell like this. So to me, in my mind, it's instantly cooling. Like just the scent just is, it's cooling.
Yeah, that's
Takes
a
you away.
perfect example of a
Yeah.
scent association sort of
Mm.
taking you back to that environment. And it's interesting, like when you mentioned vetiver and the warm weather, how it's a good note. It made me think that probably the most famous vetiver there is, the Guerlain vetiver, is to me, that's, a warmer weather scent to me because it's got very prominent citrus in it, even though it's got like warm spices and the vetiver and a bit of tobacco in its base as well. But a lot of people see that as a warmer weather fragrance too. But then a lot of other vetivers are not seen that way. Do you
Yeah.
have vetiver, Ryan, from Guerlain?
I do, and I've worn that warm weather, and I
Yeah.
find that a really easy wear in summertime. I also think it works equally well in wintertime because of all that like nutmeg and
Yeah,
tobacco stuff, and like you can kind of you Guerlain vetiver. There's not a wrong time to wear Guerlain vetiver. It's one of those
that's
like
true.
it's
All
one of those
year.
like perfect like you can wear that anytime scent. But like I would wear that sometimes when I was doing like gardening work out in the summer, like if I was mowing the lawn or things like that, like sometimes I'd put that on my chest and it kind of like worked really well with all like the gardening aromas and things like that. Vetiver is just so wonderfully grassy that I feel like
Yeah.
it has
It's like
such
earthy.
Yeah.
It's like
yeah.
an earthy grass.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Henna, that it's got that kind of cooling effect to it when depending on the presentation. Like you can do a lot with vetiver. For example, the Sycomore eau de parfum. I would struggle to maybe wear that in like the hotter days of the year for me, just because that feels like a little bit more.
Heavy.
Yeah, it's like thick in a Chanel way. Like it's not
Yeah.
just like the vetiver note. There's a lot of other things going on in there, and
Yeah.
it's not that it's a particularly dark scent maybe, but it just feels like a little heavier. But something like Guerlain vetiver or an even fresher vetiver than that, like for example, like Givenchy vetiver or something that you could do where it just has a nice grassy element can be really nice. There was a fragrance I wore for a little bit, which was an Olivier Cresp fragrance, and I'm trying to remember how I even got it into my collection. I don't have it anymore, but it was kind of nice. It was I think it was Olivier Cresp did this period, and maybe he still does, where he kind of like shadow did all the Mercedes Benz
Ah,
fragrances, And it seems like he pretty much had his run of the joint because he just kept doing like different kind of like weird things. Like nobody was paying attention to what he was releasing, I guess, at Mercedes-Benz. And he came up with this one fragrance, which was an Ambroxan freshie, but it was like a rhubarb vetiver Ambroxan freshie. So you got like this like very bitter vetiver, a bitter rhubarb opening that moved into this like very watery, grassy vetiver that was kind of supported by this very clean, kind of very pleasant like Ambroxan cloud. It was actually a very nice freshie, nicer than most of the things that you'd find on shelves these days. And it kind of what I liked about it is kind of like a vetiver mist maybe had this kind of nice effect, like somebody had almost like diffused it into the air and you were kind of like getting it in little droplets kind of like sprinkled around. It was very nice.
So that was for the Mercedes-Benz brand. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I see a lot of that. I see a lot of those here in discount stores. So, do you know if it's still available? I want to smell that now.
It probably is, and it's probably very cheap. Let me look. Let me see what it's going for. So it looks like you can get it. It depends. It looks like it's around $40 right now. But yeah,
it's not bad.
Not bad.
It's like all those Ferrari perfumes too. Like a bunch of them are actually really good. They're not very expensive.
No, they're really not. Our fragrances are like this weird, like redheaded stepchild of the designer industry. Like nobody wants to acknowledge that they exist, but you get people like Olivier Crest doing a lot of stuff for them. So
yeah,
it's interesting.
No offense to redheads, by the way. Okay. Ombre Leather Parfum. Oh, okay. That's interesting. All right. Okay, Ryan. Second choice?
Yeah, so let's stick with the incense theme since okay. You had mentioned an incense, and I have found this to be exceptionally nice in warm weather, and that is Profumum Roma's Arso, which is the pine needle incense for them. So it's a lot of frankincense with this wonderful pine needle, very photorealistic kind of like pine needle effect, and it's kind of nice. It's like it reminds me of just kind of walking outside in the woods on a warm day, and kind of the smell you get when the like pine really starts to heat up in the sun, and you got some of that like sappy resin that's sitting out in the sun. There's a nice sappy quality here. It's not quite as Christmassy as something as like Serge Lutens Fille Onagui, like something like that gets very like syrupy a little bit in this, but this stays pretty dry for the most part, despite that sappy element. And it just kind of sits on the skin in a very dry way, and it like blooms in heat in a way that's really nice. It's never really cloying, at least not for me. And you get that wonderful sort of smoky facet from the incense notes in there. It's pretty good.
Okay.
Interesting. System Error did not love it as a winter perfume. I can see it. I don't know that I would love it as a winter perfume either, but I really like it. I really like it right now. It actually kind of reminds me of being in the American Southwest a little bit, where you can get a lot of pine notes in those kind of like more dry, arid areas where it's kind of like transitioning from desert into like the greener territories. So anyway, that's one that I think works really well.
I know, Henna, you've tried a few Profumum Roma recently. Was that one of the ones that you've sampled, or you?
Yeah, Ryan sent me a sample of that one, so I totally agree. It is sappy, and I think that's something that a lot of these frankincense, pine kind of perfumes are missing. Like they're missing that sappy element, that sweetness, that stickiness that makes you think of sap. And they kind of forget about all of that. And I think Villoresi, that one, it has like the dried fruit, right? And that's what makes us think of Christmas and warmer weather, because that's what we want to eat then. So I agree. Like it is a little bit better in the spring and summer.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna move on to leather perfume, seeing that
Oh,
Paroli mentioned Tom Ford Ombre Leather. There's not many leather. I mean, I can probably think of a couple. And this perfume that I'm going to mention, probably everybody knows about and has heard of. But what makes this a really good warm weather perfume for me are the notes that surround the leather, in particular the florals, and in particular violet leaf. And I'm talking about none other than Fahrenheit. This is the original EDT, so I'm not talking about any flankers, the original. And look, to avoid getting into a conversation about vintages, this is like a 2015 version, but everything I've smelled in store since then, is pretty much the same thing. And the violet leaf really does help it work in the summer. Now, admittedly, the leather I get from Fahrenheit is not the same as the leather you might smell in Tuscan leather or even ombre leather. All those heavy kind of what's the word I'm searching for? That those oily, slightly smoky levers. It's a very light base accord in this perfume. The the floral aspects of it never get cloying in any way. But Fahrenheit has this beautiful, on my skin at least, diffusiveness when it heats up. I think it feels like one of these perfumes that in the cold and in the winter becomes more concentrated on the skin. I don't know if all perfumes kind of do this, but when I wear this in the colder weather, it stays close to me. And when it's warmer and it's exposed to a bit of heat, it feels like, it's sort of constantly creating this like sort of cloud that follows me around. So I highly recommend, if anyone hasn't tried Fahrenheit in the heat, definitely it's also the perfect warm summer night scent as well, especially if you're going out of the house and it's warm outside. I know it's not like that in Canada at the moment.
No,
So,
like
but
it's 10 degrees yesterday, so
yeah, yeah,
it's not
but
quite summer here yet, but
yeah, but definitely one to at least test in the warmer weather. Fahrenheit's fantastic, and it's a classic. It's been around since the 80s. Not everyone loves Fahrenheit. I think its uniqueness is not for like every nose. Some noses just don't get the appeal of this perfume, but it's still kind of original even after all these years. I haven't smelled too much that sort of riffed off this profile and succeeded in any way. So yeah, that's my second choice, Fahrenheit from Dior.
I think that's a great choice. So it's one reason I kind of like that first summer choice is I some people love the smell of petrol or gasoline, and some people hate it. Some people find it very kind of like obnoxious. But I've always been one of the people who, really likes the smell of gas stations and that kind of aroma. And I associate it more with summer, when that smell really carries in the air, like filling your car up with gas in the summertime on a hot day, and that smell of gasoline just kind of like filling the air. And that's one reason I have an affection for like the idea of Fahrenheit being a summer fragrance, is because that's an aroma I associate more with summer than I do with wintertime.
I'm exactly the same, Ryan, because not only the smell of the gasoline, petrol in the car, but I also associate that smell with lawnmowers, and most of the time it's in conjunction with the smell of fresh cut grass, which violet leaf has a similarity to. So that's why that combination really is almost, it is a summer combination to me. So yeah.
That's a good call. And one thing I was reminded of when you were talking about like ombre leather style leather fragrances. I don't have this. This is not one of my 5, but I do want to shout this out because I actually found that this one wore really well in summer, and it's kind of adjacent to the ombre leather style. It doesn't smell exactly like it, but the Aqua de Parma leather, which opens up with a lot of citrus to start with, a kind of very fruity citrus opening, and then goes to a much more like dry, rougher leather. I found that like when I had my bottle of it, I wore it pretty much exclusively in summertime, and it felt really exciting to me. I kind of liked it. It felt like leather dried out in the sun, which felt appropriate for summer weather conditions.
Well, I feel like it's worth mentioning since you brought it up, and I think Henna has Ambra from Aqua di Parma, and they seem to that line with the black bottles, because I know that we spent time actually smelling these in a store. That line in the black bottles is a good example of using these sort of darker, heavier character notes or accords, but lightening them up enough to use in warmer weather. And that's, Aqua di Parma's like thing anyway. They're famous for their colognes and their citruses, and they seem to have done something with that line that makes them suitable to wear pretty much year round.
I think so. I haven't worn. So I like their Ambra more than I like the Oud, but I remember I had a decant of the Aqua de Parma Oud that somebody sent me because they really liked it, and I felt like that was the kind of thing where it was like if you were going to wear like a dark synthetic woody fragrance in summertime, like that one would have worked pretty well because of what Aqua de Parma paired that kind of element with. And I find some of that same DNA in Ambra, though I will say I might not wear Ambra in high heat. It just tends to be a little thicker with that rose there, but I've come to really like Ambra, mostly because of Henna's recommendation. I wouldn't have revisited Ambra if Henna hadn't prodded me to do it.
Now I'm really worried we've ruined. I've suddenly wondered if Henna had chosen that as one of her picks.
No, because for me, I wear it more in the spring. I don't really wear it in the summer, and I think Brian, in high heat, I think it's almost like the ambergris in it would just be so annoying in the heat. It would just be a little too annoying. Yeah. So I don't.
It's almost a little sticky, like a little like it's got a ambergris can feel very like diffuse, but in that one it feels kind of thick in a way. Yeah.
Like literally makes you think of like whale vomit sitting on the beach, right? Like that's the kind of ambergris it is.
It's literally ambergris.
It literally makes you think that. And then in the summer, you just like can't escape it. Like you're not getting the blend of the ambergris and rose. You're just getting so.
Yeah. Oh, so the rose kind of disappears when it's warmer.
Yeah, quicker, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't enjoyed it if it's been warm out.
I think that makes sense because if you look at the at one point I was reading the Fragrantica reviews of Ambra, which were very interesting because like some people were praising it and then some people were saying like they were wearing it and all they were getting was wet dog smell, which sounds horrible. but I can understand maybe they were wearing it at a certain time of year or in certain climate conditions where that was like really all they were getting, and I can kind of understand how it would skew that way. It hasn't skewed that way for me, but I haven't really tried it. In like those nice like intermediary periods in winter too.
Yeah, for sure. No, so I didn't pick that one.
I was just
yeah.
No, sorry, I'm just
Eau
talking.
de Merveille or ambergris.
Yeah, I was only going to say I'm ashamed to say that I actually have never really tested that one from Hermes, and I know it's really popular and liked by a lot of people. So I think I need to get onto that. Yeah.
It's one of my favorites from Hermes, and I highlight it here because I think of it as a warm weather fragrance by default. Some people don't find it they find it a little too powdery for the warm weather, but I wear Eau de Merveille as one of my summer freshy scents all the time. I love Eau de Merveille. It's good.
All right.
Yeah.
It's on my try list now.
Yeah, it's like orange scented sunshine with like woody ambergris and like dried beech wood. It's just kind of like it's very nice. I admittedly I have a lot of nostalgia for it because I brought a sample with me that I'd never worn before when I took a trip to Lisbon, and it was Lisbon hot. It was like 80s, 90s in Lisbon, and I was having a great time, and I wore Eau de Merveille. So I always think now of being there. So there's a lot of nostalgia there for me in addition to it, but I think it's a really great fragrance.
Yeah, okay, definitely try it. Okay, sorry, Henna, you go with your next one.
Okay, so my next one, we kind of briefly mentioned spices, but I picked up Feminite du Bois by Serge Lutens, and I literally bought this. I bought this bottle when it was warm outside because I wanted something with cold spices. And this has like cinnamon and cloves, and they kind of replicate the spices in Coca-Cola or root beer. And it just makes me think of like opening a cold can of Coke or a cold can of root beer, like drinking it fresh out of the fridge. And just works. It works in the summertime really, really well because of those spices. And I guess like cinnamon and cloves have like a mentholated quality that makes it like a little bit more cooling than some of the other spices. I think if you had nutmeg in here, then it would instantly be pumpkin spice. But because there's no nutmeg, they just stay nice and cool. And it just works so well in warmer weather.
And you have a fairly new bottle as well. So there's like, have you been able to compare it to like sort of older versions of that perfume?
And I've read some reviews and people say that like that they are different. They're not the same at all. I don't know. I was pretty happy with the version that I had, so I didn't really bother seeking out the older version.
I like
the old versions are quite expensive.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. They are. I like the current version of that plenty. I think at one point I never did a side by side. Somebody did send me a sample at one point of the vintage of it. But I didn't compare side by side. But I like the current a lot. I think it's really lovely.
Yeah.
Feminite du Bois. Okay, awesome. Yeah, I noticed this comment by Paroli, the Rocobar. I had a sample of this some time ago. I vaguely remember that it felt like, because Rocobar I think is predominantly a spicy perfume, but it did feel like a good one for warm summer nights. So I agree with that assessment. Are we back around to you, Ryan?
We are, and we'll stick with spices at this point.
Okay.
So I'll follow. I could go leather or I could go spices, but I'll go spices right now just to follow up on Henna's.
May as well stay on the spice, yeah.
Stay on spice. So L'Artisan Oud, which not anybody's typical choice for warm weather. I mean, you've got dried fruits in here. Some kind of richer, more opulent notes for sure. But what I find about this is this really just blooms in the heat. And what I really love about it, the way the cumin tones in it really scream out in the heat. You really get this sort of like warm skin element from this, like in the heat, that is beautiful, especially when it's mixing with those like sweeter elements. Like it's kind of like this really delicious warm skin feeling, and I don't know, I love it. I don't think it's heavy. It's not a loud fragrance. It's always been kind of like, for all of its richness, a kind of like a fragrance that has like very restrained projection and sillage. So it kind of it's one you can get away with. If it was a heavier fragrance, I think it would be cloying, but I think it stays close enough to the skin that it's kind of just a lovely, warm radiance in heat.
And I think
Now,
you compared that one to camel, right?
Right.
And I don't know if I could wear camel in the summertime. Like when I had it, it just felt too rich.
Yeah, camel is like a thick, smoky.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's quite
like
syrupy, like a little bit more gourmand leaning. I think it's got like more vanilla in it. So, but I haven't smelled Al Oud, so you can compare the two. And
you haven't smelled Al Oud?
no,
Okay,
I
okay.
know for a l'artisan collector.
I'm going to send you some. Let's
Okay.
we'll make sure you smell some Al Oud because
Okay.
it's one of my favorites. So
Yeah.
and it's one of my favorite Duchefort creations in particular. So
Okay.
I think you will at the very least appreciate it. It's a beautiful perfume.
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it is lovely, and I think it has some similarities to Camel, but you're both right. Camel has just got a much denser profile to Al Oud. Al Oud seems to still keep, even though it's got a lot of cumin and whatever type of oud is being used in there. There is a date. I think there's dates in there as well, but it seems to keep its sort of transparency a lot better than something like Camel, which lets it work in the warm weather as well.
Yeah, it almost has a Jean-Claude Elena sort of like transparency to the structure. It's very much like Timbuktu has a similar thing in that way that these elements don't feel like they kind of come together in a kludge. They're kind of all kind of suspended apart from one another with a lot of room between them. I don't know. I just sprayed it on because I love it so much. It's really nice. What else can I say about it?
Yeah, no, it's lovely. And yeah, Hannah, you do have to try it because you're a l'artisan aficionado, and you have to try it. I'm going to stay on spice as well, but I'm going to talk about a perfume that I actually don't own a bottle of, and this is one that's like kind of been on the periphery of wish lists for a long time because there's not really anything quite like this perfume, especially highlighting the note of black pepper. And I'm talking about Lorenzo Villoresi's Piper Nigrum, which is just like I know to some people black pepper doesn't sound like an appealing profile for a perfume to wear, but I was surprised by how much I enjoyed this on my skin. The black pepper is there. I think there from memory. I mean, I should look up the notes, but from memory, there was also some like this cool frankincense or kind of incense note that came with it. But I find black pepper as a spice, one of those cooling spices. It's not something that makes me feel warm or has that or raises that temperature in a way. It's kind of when I think about it in color, like it's kind of got this cooling like light gray tone about it when you wear it. And I just found that when I did wear it on warm days, it had that effect, and it kind of I don't know, like in summer, the one thing you associate in summer here in Australia and sometimes in Melbourne is that you nearly every summer there are bushfires, forest fires, and you get that kind of when they're burning for long enough, you eventually get that smoky smell into the city, and it's in the air, and it kind of reminded me of that, but not in such a kind of negative way. Like it's just that black pepper, and yeah, Systemera mentioned there are cloves in it as well. It's kind of almost there's a little bit of Serge Noir about Piper Nigrum from Villoresi, but it's totally dominated by that black pepper to me, and to me it's really cooling and really unique. I haven't smelled another perfume that sort of spotlights pepper as a note, as well as that particular one. So now, over the last few days, I've been thinking about it because of this stream, and now I really want to at least get another decant or a sample just to wear it again.
So did you have a sample and then you finished it?
Yeah, I had like 5 ml a few years ago, and I wore it all. And then as we do, I put it on a wish list, and then it got, over time just kept getting bumped down the list by other things. So, and it's a Villoresi, so you can't go wrong. He makes great stuff.
It's an interesting fragrance. I do agree with your comparison a little bit to Serge Noir a little bit. It's interesting in how there's mint in there with the black pepper, which is not a natural pairing that you would organically make in a lot of pairings, and it gives it this sort of like mentholated camphorous element that's green alongside the black pepper, and it's a very unusual accord, and I think it can be very polarizing for a lot of people, but I agree with you. I could see this working really well in warmer weather just because it has that very strong cooling effect to it.
I'd completely forgotten about a mint, and maybe the mint was helping me feel it as a warmer weather fragrance.
Maybe so. Mint is a good summer note. There's not a lot of like really great mint fragrances, but one I really like is I wish I still had my sample of it. Maybe I do have it tucked away somewhere, but I can't find it. Is the Diptyque Eau de Menthe fragrance.
I haven't smelled that one. How is that?
I think it's great.
It's very minty.
Really good. It's really good. It's really good. Yeah, and it is one that I would think, I haven't worn it in warm weather, but I would think it would work really well because it has that wonderful, like, cooling, realistic mint element to it that is so lovely.
Well, as an aside, I think Healy makes some of the really good freshy perfumes. Like I personally like Eau de Menthe is the best mint that I've tried, because I'm for some reason a bit fussy about mint in perfume, and I loved Selmaran, and
they
I
are
tried
really good.
the Yuzu one recently, which was nice, and the ginger one was really good too.
I agree. Those ones work really well.
And as I hoped, people have been mentioning other black pepper scents, which I haven't tried, but I know the black pepper, the Comme des Garcons black pepper is in the store here, so I might try that one. I've never tried Honor Man or Marc Jacobs Bang for that matter.
I haven't tried Honor Man either. I didn't even know. Like, I feel bad. I didn't even know there was an Honor Man. I guess I've lost back with the Amouage series that there was an Honor Man somewhere among the Journeyman and the Beach Hut Man and the Memoir Man and all the infinite. I don't know. That naming convention always cracks me up. It's a Jubilation Man.
And how they're different to the woman version as well.
But a lot of those were so good.
Yeah.
A lot of them are, and it let them release 2 at a time instead of 1. I mean, not that anyone's stopping anybody from releasing 10 at a time if they want to, but
Yeah. Oh well.
Cute.
I mean, I love a couple of the perfumes from their woman version in that line.
Herbe Tout Blanc.
Which one's that one?
Herbe Tout Blanc. Guerlain.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Is that one of the new ones that Guerlain released?
Okay. That's so new. You haven't tried that one? I have a sample of it.
Yeah, that
Yep.
was 2021. Okay. So relatively young.
Mhm.
Okay, I
Okay.
think might be your turn, Henna.
So we're talking about minty things, and along with mint, there's cypress, which is another, leafy green that's mentholated, cooling, refreshing.
Yeah.
So I picked a Winter Melody by Gucci. This
Ooh.
is their scented water. I actually don't think anyone should pay retail for this because it's literally water. It does not have great lasting power,
Is
but
it called a winter melody?
yeah, it's called a Winter Melody.
Okay. Okay.
There. I mean, let's be honest, we are mostly paying for packaging, which is gorgeous and worth every penny, I think. But this pairs cypress and rose and a little bit of patchouli. So it's a rose patchouli, but with that cooling effect of cypress. And it works great in the summer because you can spray, and it's just going to cool you down. And then half an hour later, you can spray more and keep spraying. And that's kind of the fun of these light summer perfumes is that they don't even need to last a long time because, I mean, that was the original idea with 4711, right? You flash it on yourself and then it's not meant to last a long time. The alcohol cools you down as it evaporates. And then when you need to, just splash more on or drink it or put it in your hair or whatever. So this is kind of the same idea, I think. And I think that's why they put it in a water, is just
So
so you could
that's
stir it
that.
easily.
Is that the? Are they called the Alchemist's Garden? That particular
Mm-hmm.
line? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And the whole thing about them, apart from being in really elaborate packaging, is that they're water based as opposed to alcohol.
Not all of them. They have
Oh, okay.
they have some that are water based. They have some regular perfumes. They have oils.
Yeah.
Um, and so like a variety of ways of delivering fragrance.
Okay.
And they're all different. Like this only comes in this format, it doesn't come in any of the other formats.
All
So
right.
yeah. So, I
And
mean,
and that.
a bunch of them are really good actually.
Yeah.
I just think they get overlooked because of the price.
It
Right.
happens. I haven't tried most of that line for that reason. But it's also hard for me to sample. I don't know that I've seen. I mean, I guess there's a Gucci boutique I could go to. Do they have them in the Gucci boutique for me to smell?
They might even have them at like a Saks,
Yeah. They
right?
have
Like
them in
that's where,
department store here. Yeah.
yeah. I don't know. Do you have one near you, a Saks, or I don't know if Nordstrom would have them, but definitely I feel like I don't know. I feel like Saks has like a little bit more exclusive stuff, right?
Oh, Saks usually does. Yeah, I would have to
Yeah.
travel a bit for Saks, but Parth says they do have them at the Gucci boutiques. Okay, good to know. I might give that a visit at some point. But that sounds nice. I like cypress a lot as a note. So something summery with a cypress through line sounds like it would appeal to me. So I guess that's
that's
go ahead.
to you.
No, I want to cut you off, Henna, if you had more to say.
No, not at all.
Is that the only one that you've got from that line, Henna?
Yeah, and it's another one that I keep meaning to add more because there's one that's like a winter, spring, and then there's one that's like the last day of summer. Like those are just like they're so good. They're like nostalgic, and then when you smell them, you're like, oh yeah, this is like winter going into spring. Like it just works. Kind of like L'Eau d'Hiver, right? From Frederic Malle, like just does smell a little bit cold and crisp, and they're good for what they are.
Yeah.
The notes on the last day of summer look great. It's cypress, cedar, patchouli, nutmeg, vetiver. That sounds like that could be a nice.
It's very nostalgic. It's like the day before school starts. That's what it smells like to me.
Mm.
You have to go smell
that
it.
does sound good.
It sounds really good. That sounds really good. So I'll definitely have to give those a try. All right.
All right. I think it's you, right?
Okay, so we're going to leather. And this one I think is a polarizing pick because I don't know that everybody else would want to wear this in summer, but I have been wearing it in warm weather and getting a kick out of it. And this is Santa Maria Novella Peau d'Espagne.
Ooh.
Which is such an interesting leather because it opens with that very smoky birch tar to start, and then you get this heavy like iodine leather accord, which is like that goes very soapy in a very like classic way, but it's like a soapy iodine kind of experience for most of the time, and it's kind of weird and unusual in that way. And it has this sort of like continual earthiness. It's never a very clean fragrance, that's for sure. But it really just blooms in heat. It's just kind of like fun. I spray it on in heat and it just kind of explodes off the skin and it makes me laugh. And it kind of it evolves enough that it's not cloying because it like goes in that direction of that sort of cooling iodine leather accord anyway with the soapy elements, that it doesn't stay like smoky for very long. If it stayed smoky and heavy, it would be like somebody mentioned in the chat that they T-Rex by zoologists wearing that in summer. That would be way too much for me. But something like this works really nicely because it ends up being very kind of classic and soapy by the time you finally get to its later stages. So Peau d'Espagne, Santa Maria Novella, it's a pretty wild ride in heat, but I think it's a blast.
But just on that though, Ryan, because I mean I've smelled that perfume, and I probably would be a bit timid to try it in the summer. Do you actually like use less sprays in the summer than you would if you were wearing that in the winter?
I mean, I would never apply a lot of sprays of this to begin with in any season. I think given its character, so it is probably at most a 2 spray fragrance for me, maybe 1 on each arm, and then call it a day. But yeah, I don't find that it actually screams that loud though after you apply it. It's a very bracing scent at first, but it actually doesn't like. I wholeheartedly agree with Micah on this one. I mean, I wear that a lot. And that's, again, another leather, because it actually is an eau de cologne to start, and then it dries down to a very soapy leather accord. That one works really well. But that's a more classically summer-oriented fragrance, so that's why that didn't make the cut. Unlike Peau d'Espagne, which is completely wrong for summer. I shouldn't wear it in summer, but it's actually been a lot of fun.
Just like you're like jumping on the de-influencing trend where it's like, don't wear this, but I wear it. Don't. Everybody else just should not wear this.
Yeah. Do as I say, not as I do.
I mean, I think it's a safe. Anybody. I mean, like this is a fragrance, admittedly, that like if you wear this out, it's nobody's getting compliments walking around with a cloud of Peau d'Espagne around. It is a very unusual fragrance, and I wear it sparingly, but it I don't know, something about it is fun.
I think it was zoologist rhinoceros that people were saying that they were wearing in the summer, not T-Rex.
Oh, not T-Rex. T-Rex is like. I have
rubber.
Yeah, I have worn T-Rex in heat because I sprayed it on when I sampled it, and then like, so in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, there's like 2 different perfume shops owned by the same place, and they're like blocks apart. So I sampled the zoologist line, and had put on T-Rex, and then like had walked like 5 blocks to the other place and entered the shop, and the shop attendant was like, "Are you wearing T-Rex?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm wearing T-Rex. I'm sorry."
It should almost just like keep it behind the counter and you have to ask for it, and then they like put a spray on instead of letting people just go ham with it in the shop.
It's pretty nuclear.
They keep it locked in a glass cabinet.
I love T-Rex, but I just never got it because I didn't think I could ever wear it. I love it. I think it smells so good, but
it's a hoot. I mean, I really do like it, but it's like it was one of those things where it's like you wear that once, and it is like I only had like one spray on my hand. I want to be clear. Like I had one spray on my hand. This is not like I did not bathe myself in T-Rex. This thing was screaming, and I could never wear it out. I don't know what people would even say if I walked in to a place smelling like T-Rex.
Yeah, definitely a for me fragrance. I'm a bit. I actually only smelled T-Rex once, just on a blotter, but the one that I kind of feel similarly about is Hyde from Hiram Green. Have you guys smelled that? Like I don't know how anyone could wear that in the heat, because I don't know, it just would be reminiscent of rotting flesh in the hot summer sun.
Maybe they just want to smell like a barbecue. Maybe it's all those summer barbecues.
Yeah,
they
exactly.
really want that, like they really want to smell like cooking meat on a grill, and that they're going for it.
All right. I'm gonna bring it back from barbecue and grilling meat a little bit, and the next one I'm gonna talk about. I'm going to save my amber for my last perfume, because I have chosen an amber for the heat. But this one here is basically, as the name is going to suggest, based around a bunch of wood notes. And if you look at the note pyramid for this one, they actually mentioned a note of sequoia, or the redwood that you find in North America, which I'm not actually familiar with. This has dry cocoa in it as well. But what brings it all together for me, and what makes it wearable in the warmer weather, is this really zesty, bright ginger note that kind of elevates all those heavier, woodier notes. And I'm talking about Olfactive Studios Woody Mood. So I don't know. To me, this has always felt like a warmer weather fragrance, despite its note pyramid, and I give all that credit to the amazing ginger note that this opens up with. It just lightens everything up. It like this one here, I definitely do underspray compared to when I'm wearing it in the winter. When it's warmer, like maximum a couple of sprays, and it projects really well. It lasts a long time, and this is Bertrand Duchaufour as well. So I think he definitely has a way with these kind of using heavier materials and somehow making them making that composition work under any kind of sort of environment. Have either of you tried this?
no, I haven't.
In passing, I've smelled it like once on a strip, and like it was like one of those, like, 20-second sniffs, and then it was gone. So my recollection of it is very very loose.
All right. I just think I think from that house in particular, it's probably, I'm just surprised that no one likes it or talks about it as much, but maybe I'm alone in loving it as much as I do. But again, that's a bottle that I've had for probably about 6 years now, and I'll definitely buy a bigger bottle when that one runs out.
That's quite a recommendation, and I've always associated it with you, Pep, because I know you're the only person I know who talks about woody mood, really. And so I have been curious to try it, because I mean, it seems really nice. So maybe it may be worth a revisit.
We would have smelled them all at Garcons, but again, we were smelling them so quickly that we couldn't really, like, you can't smell everything and give it the time that it deserves, right?
Well, I mean,
So,
we were at that stand for a while, and I still didn't try everything that they had there. So
yeah.
you're right. Like it's just a bit overwhelming.
Mm.
But if there are any stores that do olfactive studios near you guys, just next time you're there, give it a try.
Mm. Okay,
All right,
for my
Hannah.
next one, I have a Santa Maria Novella perfume also, and I chose Melograno. And I have to say that before Melograno, I didn't really like soapy perfumes. Like that whole soap accord, like I didn't understand why anyone would want soap. But I had mostly tried things that were just musky. So like Blanche by Byredo, which is just like Tide detergent. So I don't like the detergent kind of soapiness. And I haven't tried the hospital soap kind of soapiness of Eau d'Espagne, but this one is like an expensive, almost like ivory soap, I think. It's just like a really clean white soap, and it's not just white musk. It's like a blend of florals and then musk, like a lot of ylang ylang, and it just is clean. I like it. So I think that's perfect for the summer because people won't even know that you're wearing perfumes. They're just going to think that you are good. It's always good.
You've definitely influenced me on that particular perfume, Hannah. I think it's one of Santa Maria Novella's best. But interestingly, when I think of that perfume, I actually automatically think warmer weather anyway, for Melograno, because maybe it's because I'm thinking pomegranate, because I think Melograno's the Italian word for pomegranate. Although it's not like, I don't know, you might think differently. To me, it doesn't sort of dominate the scent profile of that particular
I don't smell
perfume.
any fruit in this.
Yeah, yeah,
And
it's interesting.
yeah, I don't know if one day I'll smell it or one day I'll get that connection to pomegranate. I just really don't. So, yeah, I don't smell any fruit with this.
And by the way, while we're talking about Santa Maria Novella, like, for anyone who has not smelled them, if you find a store near where you live, I would set aside about 5 hours just to be able to smell everything they have, because everything's actually worth smelling in their whole line. Like,
Yeah.
I think you could make the mistake of deciding not to smell something in store, and you could be missing the one thing you're gonna really love. That's my recommendation if you have the time, and obviously subject to nose fatigue and all of that. But I would try everything that Santa Maria Novella makes, basically.
I love Santa Maria Novella, and actually now it's a really good time to sample it because certain things have been discontinued, but they're still around, and like it's a pretty good time to kind of jump on the Santa Maria Novella train. One that is one of their best sellers that I actually think does work well in summer, and I don't have one of these five. I mean, in theory, I should have picked one, which is like, what is the gourmand you wear in summertime? I don't have one that I selected for this video, but the Tobacco Toscano that they have, which is kind of a vanilla with a rubbery facet, kind of reminiscent of Bulgari Black, if you've smelled that, but a little bit more into the leather, like soft, like leather tobacco pouch kind of facet of that with floral tones. That actually is subdued enough that it works really nicely in summertime, particularly summer evenings, more so than the daytime. I wouldn't necessarily wear it in the hot heat of the day, but actually that one is a pretty good choice if you were to look for like what a summertime vanilla might be.
And I think they're older perfumes. Like I know Melograno and probably Peau d'Espagne also. They're eau de cologne, so like they're pretty light and effervescent.
They are, and they tend to use a lot of citrus. So that was the thing. Like I didn't bring it out here because I talk about this fragrance all the time, and nobody wants to hear me talk about Aqua de Cuba for the 90th time on any video. Like there needs to be like a moratorium on me talking about that fragrance. But like that has a lot. That has honey. That has tobacco. That has like woody tones. But like there's so much lemony citrus in it in a way that it kind of lifts it and gives it that sort of classic almost I don't know another word for it, but like barbershop-y, apothecary feeling that is fresh and alive. And I do wear Aqua de Cuba in summer, though it is a tenacious fragrance, so I will say it is one where I'm very careful to apply that one delicately during the summertime, because it can be a little persistent. But to change gears to talk about my final fragrance of the 5, and this is one I just selected because it's June, it's been warm weather, and I am wearing this all the time. So if I'm wearing this all the time, it is clearly something that is working for me. It's a relatively new fragrance, but I'm liking it a lot, and that is Caron's Pour Parfum, which they just released to celebrate the 90th anniversary of Pour. And so this is a lavender overdose version of Pour. Pour already has a lot of lavender, but this is like in the note pyramid they cite 4 different types of like lavender materials in this, and then so instead of the heavy musk and vanilla, you do get musk a little bit here, you do get vanilla. There's that's there, but it's pulled way down, and instead what you get is a lot of like balsamic and resinous stuff in the base. So it's like very smooth, sort of like resinous benzoin balsams kind of feeling, and it's really nice. I don't know. It wears really well just because of that lavender. Lavender just kind of works in any season, but like this overdose of lavender, I don't know. I find it so easy to wear. I find it so comforting because I love the scent of lavender. Pep and I recently talked on the live stream about how he really likes the musk and vanilla part of Pour, and I really just like the lavender. So this, for me, in giving me a lot of the lavender, has scratched an itch for me. But I think this works really well in heat, despite not really having any fresh elements aside from the lavender. If you think lavender has some sort of intrinsic freshness to itself, that's there, but there's no real like citrus uplift in this fragrance. It is lavender and resins. And it works really well.
So apart from that, Ryan, and it's called the Parfum, is the concentration actually Parfum concentration? I mean, I'm assuming it's a little bit more concentrated than the original EDT. Does it wear like that?
It wears concentrated, but it's not particularly dense. I think it's Parfum more for marketing purposes than anything. I mean, it does wear. It wears in the way that sometimes parfums can versus like other concentrations. It wears a little bit closer to the skin. This is not like a loud, particularly heavy fragrance. I would say it's a little bit denser. Like you're not getting. One of the things that's really beautiful in Pour is you get this very like spiky lavender, like almost like you really plucked it straight out of the garden. The lavender here is definitely much more of like a rounded plush lavender, like kind of like, because there's just so many different lavender materials playing together, it feels very rich and it feels deep, but it does not feel as garden like as Pour lavender. So
okay,
yeah, I don't know.
Do you think that version is more masculine than the regular Pour, just because it doesn't have as much vanilla?
No, so I have always found, I don't know, I would say this is equally unisex. So if you have the one fragrance I think this is closest to, but it's different than this, is Molinard has the Lavande, which is its version of a lavender fragrance, and it does the same thing where it does lavender on top of resins instead of vanilla. So there's less of the Pornum DNA in that. It really is almost like if you took the benzoin from Bois d'Harmonie, and it has this like Papier d'Harmonie carte feeling in the base, and then put a bunch of like spiky lavender on top of it, and it feels kind of like that. So very unisex. I would say this is almost genderless in the way that like you couldn't pick up a lavender essential oil and say that it feels really gendered. It just feels like a very neutral experience.
Lavender.
Yeah, and I would say also my memory is skewed because the latest versions of Pornum that I've smelled have actually been the 1980s vintage, where they kind of skewed the musky components in it to make it a little bit more like powerhousey. So Pornum had different variations over the years. So like it was originally very classic and sort of dandyish and like powdery, and then in the 1980s they realized everybody kind of wanted like their musky animalic tones in. So the Pornum version that was released in the 80s has like the musk kind of overdosed. And so it's kind of like a little dirtier than the other versions. And that's the one I've smelled the most recently. So also in my mind, like Pornum, the most recent versions of it have skewed a little bit more masculine than probably what people are more familiar with in the current, which kind of returned back to the 1930s style of what Pornum was originally.
I might have to have a smell of that one.
Yeah, of all of them.
I will. Yeah, I mean, what I would say is I haven't really tried a lot of the new Caron stuff because it's under new management, and I would say that this is promising. Let's put it this way: this is like a very, especially given the price, the quality is very nice. Like even at retail, this is a very reasonably priced fragrance. And I would say, so Micah mentioned Tom Ford's Lavender Extreme. Like this is Micah, if you love Tom Ford's Lavender Extreme and you have a bottle, I'm not shaming it, but this is a nicer fragrance for a much lower price than Tom Ford's Lavender Extreme. In terms of what you would expect from a lavender note in a perfume these days, it's very clear they didn't do the like off the shelf lavender materials that you find in a lot of the typical creations around. Like this is an unusually well-rounded lavender experience in a release that isn't priced at like niche tier.
Just and just since you mentioned the Lavande from Molinard, I just want to say, because Henna, what was the one that you recently posted from Molinard that you
I just tried the amber.
The amber. And
have you guys smelled that one?
No, but I kind of like the patchouli from that purple line as well. So that's a bit of an underrated line from Molinard, if anyone's familiar with them.
Ryan, I think you would like the amber because it's like a traditional amber accord, like patchouli, benzoin, vanilla, but also with labdanum. So, and you love labdanum. So like, once you get into the dry down, you get this like real chewy labdanum with like this classic, really nicely done amber accord. Like the amber is there, and then you also get labdanum. So I think you would like it.
You're selling me on it. You're selling me on it. I'm an easy mark. As soon as I saw you comment on it, I was like literally like Googling like, okay, what can I get?
What's the cheapest price on it? It's like $57, and it's in my mind, it's basically the amber from like Coromandel, and then also with some labdanum. And I just have a sample, so I'm sure there's like top notes in there that I'm not getting, but whatever they are, good. It's good base.
That whole line is underrated. I was at a store where they had the line, and I have to say the quality of what you get in the Molinard line is like bang for your buck, really excellent. Like it is one of those lines that people just kind of sleep on, because I think they do tend to be like a little bit more like simple, clear concept, right? Like
Yeah.
their lavande is a lavender fragrance, their amber is an amber fragrance, their vanilla is a vanilla fragrance. Like these aren't the big conceptual like things that get a lot of fragrance people excited. But I think like if you were to sit somebody down who just really wanted a nice range of fragrances and a spectrum, they really do a good job with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and at the same time, Molinard also make Habanita, which is, separate from that purple line, but they have made a couple of iconic perfumes as well. So I think they've got a good base. Definitely should be explored in terms of that purple line. So there was just a question about some affordable other lavenders, and I'm hoping the chat might help out Druba for recommendations. I couldn't think of any other than Potpourri when we're talking sort of affordable, because Caron's, I guess, reasonably priced at the moment. All right, it's my final pick. That was Ryan's final pick. So for my final pick, I have firstly, it's a bottle that I used to own and I no longer own. And the dominant accords in this perfume are, I did want to see if I could pick an amber that was good in the heat. And this one definitely has an amber base in combination with a bunch of spices. And even a little bit of incense, if memory serves me correctly. Now, I want to qualify this by saying, for me, this worked in the heat, but it has to be a relatively dry heat. If I wore this in a humid environment, I don't know if it would work as well. I'm just going to show you a picture of the perfume that I'm talking about. This is Andy Towers' L'air du Desert Marocain. For whatever reason, I think the dryness of this perfume works really well in the heat, because none of the amber elements of I'm trying to think of the right word. There's nothing. Basically, everything is dry. I'm trying to avoid saying moist or wet, because I know people hate those words. But it's really dry. The spices make it even drier, and given that it's also inspired by the desert, it makes sense to kind of wear this in somewhat dry heat as well. And when I did wear it, it worked. And I mean, the reason this was not one of the perfumes, Ryan, where I loved and then I didn't love anymore. I always had a strong like for this perfume, but obviously not enough that it didn't survive me culling my perfume collection down. So this is one of the bottles that went. But I do remember actually wearing this more on warmer days than I did in the winter. What was your experience? Do you both own this one, by the way?
I do.
I have a sample of it.
Yeah.
A chance of it.
I almost pulled it into this 5, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I find that it kind of wears me instead of me wearing it. So I never ended up getting a whole bottle.
I understand that, and I do find that because I took a break from it. It was something I smelled very early on in my perfume journey, where it was like I was sampling these notable things, and that was one of the first really like conceptual perfumes I tried, and it kind of knocked me out at the time. And then I've circled back to it really recently to get to know it, and there is a greenness to it, because there is a strong vetiver element if you're paying attention to it. Like,
yes.
there is a lot of spice in like dry, incensey tones that are creating this dry effect, but there is actually a little bit of greenness that you can kind of anchor into, and I do find that it wears well. I do not find that its cousin, Au Coeur de Desert, the Extrait, works. That is too like ambery, too dark and dense and smoky to really work that way. But L'air de Desert Marcom, because it's an eau de toilette, is a little bit more like diffuse and aromatic, and I have been able to get away with it. I love that fragrance. Yeah. I do agree also with Henna, though, that it is definitely one of those fragrances that wears you a little bit more than you wear it. But I feel like there are a number of things that I love that do that. Like even something like Pep and I both love Sevilla Lobe, and I sometimes feel like that fragrance wears me more than I wear it. I just don't mind it if that it's doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my 5 fragrances, and I'm very curious to hear what your last one is, Hannah.
My last one is another soapy perfume, but a little bit more heavy on the powder. I love powder, and that is Prada's L'Eau d'Iris, but this is the EDC, not the EDP. It was limited edition, and it just leans into the iris a little bit more and amps up like the powderiness. It has heliotrope in it. It doesn't get ambery like the original EDP does. And so it's just a little bit lighter and a little bit soapier.
So this is Prada L'Eau d'Iris. So it's different to...
It's Infusion d'Iris, sorry.
Infusion. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got galbanum in it, so a little bit of greenness. And I feel like this whole line was a little bit underrated, maybe because it wasn't, like when it was launched for women instead of being unisex. And then they had like a Infusion Dom, which made all the other ones obviously for the feminine customer. So I think they just got overlooked, but it's actually pretty genderless. Like it is green and fresh and clean and everything you want in a summer perfume, but no citruses. There's neroli in here, but neroli's pretty green, right? It's not really a citrus.
So I'm curious, Mika has just said Infusion line was great. Does that mean they don't make the Infusion line anymore?
No, they make them. They have a new one every year. I think last year was big, and this year is, I can't remember what they're doing this year. There's another one launching in 2024.
Okay.
I just think the original ones were maybe a little bit more hype, like the Iris and the L'Homme. There was a vetiver, which had black pepper in it with the vetiver. That was really great. I just think they're not as exciting anymore, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Iris, in fairness, Iris is not a note that I normally associate with warmer weather, even though that... I've talked about this on my other videos. That molecule, eccentric molecule Iris perfume is really good in warmer weather because I wore it when it was summer here a few months ago. So I'm very curious to try that one. I am still looking for it, by the way.
Have you tried this?
Oh, go ahead.
Tried any of them, Ryan?
Not the Infusion line. And actually, I haven't really tried the Prada lines. I honestly haven't tried as much. So, admittedly, I part of that is just that there was a period of time where Prada was very iris focused in general, and I am not an iris disliker, but mostly just like kind of ambivalent towards iris a little bit as a through line. So I just kind of stayed away. But like the one, but I kind of got excited about that line after we were in the Mazzolari shop and I tried Marienbad, and it was so interesting that I was like, maybe Prada is worth another look. Like we just kind of been sleeping on all those Prada fragrances, like we've been sleeping on the Gucci ones and all this other stuff. There's just so much to keep up with that people don't talk about it. And maybe that's the case with Prada.
I think people do talk about the Infusion de Riz quite a bit, like the original EDP. And what had happened is they originally launched single note perfumes that you could only get in the boutique. So it was like iris, benzoin, frankincense, right? And then they made the Infusion line, which was like, okay, this is for mass market and it's available, wherever Coty, which is the distributor, can distribute our perfume. So, originally when they launched their line, it was very like low key. And if like if you're shopping for clothes in the shop, like here's the perfumes that we have kind of thing. Maybe that's why like they never really like got any hype because they weren't like, the Chanel Les Exclusive.
Maybe.
Yeah, I definitely want to try more of that Prada exclusive line that we smelled briefly, because there were a couple that were pretty impressive. I might get everyone, starting with Ryan, to just recap the list. It is scrolling across the screen. I'm not sure if everyone can see that, but maybe if you just roll off each of the 5 that we've mentioned in the stream, and then we'll give the chat a chance to ask us any questions if they have them. But we're at an hour and a half, so it's good. Ryan?
All right. My first was Tom Ford for Men Extreme. My second was, I believe, Profumum Roma Arso. I did L'Artisan Parfumer Al Oud, Santa Maria Novella Peau d'Espagne, and finally Caron pour un Homme Parfum, the 2024 version, because there was a Parfum in the past, so don't get them confused. There's a new version of it that they have released. And that's it.
And my 5, and I'm not sure if this is the same order I did them in, but were Comme des Garcons 2-man, then Dior's Fahrenheit, then I spoke about Villoresi Piper Nigrum, Olfactive Studio Woody Mood, and Andy Towers L'air du Desert Americain.
And then I chose Jean Takai Vetiver, Serge Lutens Feminite du Bois, A Winter Melody by Gucci, Melograno by Santa Maria Novella, and then Prada Infusion de Riz EDT.
Excellent. So anyone in the chat, they're our, I guess, sort of out of the box selection for alternatives to wear in the warmer seasons. If you've got any questions, now's your opportunity to ask. If not, that's fine, because the 3 of us all have things to do after this, I guess. So we're not going to spend a whole bunch of time talking stuff, but if you guys got any questions that you want to bring up, let us know. But otherwise, Ryan and Henna, thank you for making the time to do this. And thanks to everyone for watching, by the way. If you guys think of any other, actually, if anyone in the chat has got any other topics that you might want the 3 of us to talk about in the future, I'm all ears, and I love suggestions like that, because it makes me think about stuff that I wouldn't normally think about.
Absolutely. I don't know. I enjoy videos like this because it highlights the way in which fragrance can just kind of play by its own rules a little bit, and also I think the categorization of fragrances into seasons is very cultural in that way. Like certainly the Middle East is not afraid of wearing things that I would be reticent to wear in the heat of summer.
Well, I mean, I think Ryan, you mentioned earlier about. Oh no, maybe it was Hannah. Hannah said that she likes to wear Ambra from Aqua di Parma more. Was it Ambra that you said you like to wear
Yeah,
in spring?
yeah, spring or
And
fall.
yeah, and it's interesting because it's clear that in some parts of the world, probably more so where you guys live, that the seasons are really more defined.
Yeah, that's true.
Whereas where I live, my experience is that winter is very consistently at one temperature, even though it's not as freezing cold as it is in the northern hemisphere where you guys live, but it's just like really constant. And spring doesn't really happen here, like it just kind of occasionally you'll get a warmer day and then all of a sudden you're into summer, and there's not a really defined spring here in Melbourne. So for me, it makes more sense in my mind to have just cold weather sense and warm weather sense. But what this stream has proved is that, like, I guess, gendered fragrance, that's a whole personal, it's a really personal thing anyway. So
For sure.
neroli fragrances. Well, I can definitely name a couple. I'm pretty sure these
So
guys can too. You can go first, Hannah, because I know you've got a couple
Well,
that you
I
like.
just said that the Infusion Juice has a really good neroli note. Any version of it.
I love neroli. So neroli is I love a good neroli scent. I'm a sucker for it. So I can see neroli working really well with iris. To be honest, that just feels like a very nice
Mhm.
pairing. Um, the best neroli soliflor that I have found is Castle Forbes Special Reserve Neroli, which is kind of a fragrance people don't talk about very much, but is released only kind of every once in a while when they can get the raw materials for it, because they are actually sourcing like a very um, high quality neroli material. And so it feels very much like an authentic, realistic, just dose of like almost like raw neroli extraction. And it is gorgeous and rounded and has that wonderful juicy sort of bitter orange zing in there. And then it does skew kind of like into the soapy space that neroli does. It evolves very quickly. It's not a loud fragrance, but the quality of it is just gorgeous. I love one that people sleep on, which I think is great because it actually performs really well, is Floris Neroli Voyage, which is like got
Mm.
this wonderful. It's kind of like Aqua de Parma Colonia Essenza, but it's a little bit nicer and softer. It's like a day at the spa sort of scent, kind of in the vein of something like Diptyque Eau de Sol. But it's got this watery neroli note, and then it's got this fennel note in the base, which is very unusual to get this very prominent fennel feeling, which is playing the role that almost you would expect like patchouli to do in certain fragrances. Like it's just like this very prominent fennel. It lasts a long time. It's not an expensive fragrance to get. Really great. So strongly recommended. I've worn a lot of Neroli Voyage. I don't have it currently just because I was making room for other things, but it was like my go-to out and about like safe fragrance for folks, and I found it very comforting.
And you can't go wrong even with 4711, right? Like for a neroli,
Mhm.
like I mean, if it's that particular note, I'll add Mugler cologne as well, if you can find it, or whatever version it is in now. That's one of my favorite nerolis. Yeah.
I mean, 4711, I think if you were to actually look like at fragrances I've gone through like milliliter per milliliter. I've probably gone through more milliliters of 4711 than anything else, just because I'm so wasteful with it. I had one of the big jugs of it at one point in time, like the big, like I can't remember like how big it was. I just had it by my sink, and I would just wash my hands with it. Honestly, it's fantastic stuff.
I wear Sevilla Lob in the summer, but it's not that one. I'm hesitant to say I could wear in any heat because there is that really heavy beeswax in the base that could get a little bit cloying. But you know, like I love it enough that I could wear it anytime.
I feel the same way, Pep. It's one of those fragrances that I love. Like there are fragrances that I don't think necessarily work well in high heat, but like I miss so much that I will wear them during summertime. And Sevilla Loeb is one of those. I think it's actually better in kind of like moderate temperatures because there's a little bit of sweetness there, and the beeswax is pretty thick. But like I'm sure August will come along, and I'll be spraying on some Sevilla Loeb just because I missed it.
Well, just out of interest, what is the hottest month where you guys live normally?
Probably,
go ahead.
Probably August, I would say. Yeah.
It's generally August. Through July can be pretty hot too.
Yeah.
It really depends because every summer is a little bit different. But like,
yeah.
But August has the stereotype of being the hot month, and also it's the month where people have kind of like started to be. I don't know how it is in Henna's part of the country where she hasn't even hit summer yet, but like where I'm at, we're already well into like, you know, have had probably a good month of relatively warm summer adjacent weather. So by the time August rolls around, people tend to be starting to feel a little tired of the summer weather. August is actually my favorite time of summer, where like summer starts to feel really lazy and drawn out. And like I have a lot of nostalgia for like before going back to school and like during my summer break. And I don't know, but August tends to be the hot one.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I think this might be a good time to thank everyone in the chat, and especially for me, thank you so much, Ryan and Hannah, for doing this stream with me. And by all means, if we do this again, we can do it on anyone's channel, so I don't mind where we do it. And for those of you in the chat, if you aren't already following Hannah or Ryan and Ryan on YouTube, by all means do so. I'll make sure that your channel links are in the description at some point. Guys, it's been a pleasure as always.
Thank you.
All right, I might end the stream here. Have a great night or day, everybody, and we'll see you soon with another topic. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.